trying to figure out how to use my
Does.
iPad as an extended monitor with Sidecar, and I haven't got it quite working yet. So,
It does
um,
work kind of. That's what I'm doing because I don't have any kind of bigger monitors, so I'm stuck with a workstation and a
yep,
tablet. But
yep.
I do the Mattermost on the tablet, which makes it easier to stay
Yeah,
with.
duty. You should just get a big monitor. I mean, you're on so many of these calls trying to do so much more.
It's
Anyway.
on my list.
Yep.
The other one is using your iPad for one thing and your computer for another thing, like Zoom on one or
Well, that's what I'm actually doing. I'm
Zoom
zooming,
on both,
zooming
actually,
on
I guess.
on my workbook, and I'm using the tablet for the chat because then I can kind of flip around to the other web pages and stuff on that without losing the content on the main screen. So, but I need to upgrade all of this computer stuff at some point. So,
So
anyway,
today we're in, so this is the OGM Wiki Call for 2021, 3/17, March 17th. And today I'm using HackMD. We're editing one page in HackMD. I've posted this link. You'll see it here in the OGM Wiki channel in Mattermost. So theoretically, you can go there. You can actually just watch there in preview mode, which would look like this, or you can do edit mode. Jerry, I don't know how we got confused and turned around, but I don't see any more HackMD editing in pretty text mode, so I don't think it's a thing.
Yeah, I was just looking at. I tried double clicking on the document, and that didn't lead me into edit mode. And now I'm looking at the Markdown. So there we are.
And this is the all Markdown mode for people who. So I'll leave it like this, which is going to be a little bit distracting and maybe kind of useful, I guess. This is actually when you're editing a forum post, you see this double pane view because they're not fancy yet. So anyway.
So did that work? I just added a focusing
question.
question.
Yes, it's right there.
Cool.
So today we thought we would look at some focusing questions, and we've also kind of scribed down some dreams and needs from yesterday's meeting. This page, like again, I said, we're editing just a single page in HackMD, and then I'll copy this into the wiki later, just after this call. So focusing questions, what would we use a wiki for? Would we use it? I don't know. What teams of volunteers, and so not just volunteers, but what teams of volunteers do we need to make this into a community asset? When we get around to it and we have enough information to actually need to arrange it, how would we arrange the information and knowledge in a wiki? Or I kind of wonder if we'll have multiple wikis. Massive wiki, it turns out I think what you end up doing is creating a number of wikis to kind of focus your information, and then the pages kind of float around as they need to. And that means they'll kind of always be a little bit out of date, but they'll also get to grow and morph the way they want to. Yuri's got some great founding principles about his stuff that eventually consistent is good enough rather than, strictly consistent all the time.
Sidebar. Giri's work runs really deep. I'd love to figure out how to sort of fold it into all of this as we go, if any of it is fold-inable. And then remember Rich Burden and his eventually consistent sort of architecture and all that. I've pinged him. I've sent him a couple of emails. He hasn't written back. I would love to hear what he's got, like what shape it is in, because it could be that all of our weird quests, all of our excellent quests to find out what are the right pieces of architecture might have been solved by these co-inventors along the way. So, and if they've invented them and they're open, like, let's rock on and try them out.
There are a number of kind of eventually consistent databases that could underlie a wiki, for instance, and Yuri is using an eventually consistent database. He's actually pretty clever and pretty well distributed the way he's thinking about it. And the good news is Yuri is super energized by Massive Wiki. and actually even the OGM Wiki, and is like cheek and by jowl. We had a long after call yesterday, he and I, and
oh, that's awesome.
And he's like, oh my God, this is so cool, and I'm so inspired, and I'm gonna make my thing even easier, and it's gonna be like, and so he's on the hunt, and we're gonna benefit from his genius.
That's fabulous.
So kind of along the same lines, how would a OGM Wiki interface with other communities' knowledge bases? This would also potentially be like Jerry's The Brain, or Mark Trexler's Climate Web. It doesn't have to be a wiki. How would we describe the overall purpose of the OGM Wiki? My keyboard's asleep. How do we best explain OGM Wiki to others? Jerry, when you said this, did you mean OGM Wiki or even more than that?
I meant OGM Wiki, yeah.
And how can we experiment with uses beyond Wiki, like brains or
website builders, book authoring, blogs? I mean, you know, basically this can be manifest in lots of different ways. And for me, I want to get to a quick sort of storytelling video of how that might work, so that people matchmaking, other kinds of stuff, and even dashboards, activity dashboards, right? I want to get to that pretty quickly, so that people go, oh, I get why it's sort of clunky up front, but has all this possible power.
I wonder if it might be helpful to focus initially on the very first question and the one about the overall purpose, because I think that might help us then frame the answers to the rest.
I'm going to, I think that's a good idea, Judy, and I'm actually going to put them together up at the top here. And
you work online, Pete.
What's that?
I love the way you work online.
Thank you.
You think it and it happens within seconds.
When we all get good at this together, we'll be doing it together, which is really fun. It's kind of funny. These are, yeah. So we also have these bullets down here, which are kind of like hints or thoughts already in this. So I don't want to like get over specific on these. I don't
think you need to read those to us at that point.
And definitely we won't read them, yeah. Except maybe patterns. Patterns is a big deal.
I would suggest that we have two overall purposes for the wiki. One is to introduce anyone and the world to who and what we are and what we're trying to do. And the other is to provide an entry roadmap for how to dig in and start doing.
And I would kind of add to that the pattern language we were trying to build, which is how do we distill what we're learning to share it out easily?
Great addition, Jerry. Thank you.
Thanks.
I love this team. I mean,
say that again, Jerry.
I love it.
How do we distill what we've learned to share it out easily with others? It's our pattern language. And there may be several pattern languages that we end up coming up with, etc. But let's just put it under the pattern language kind of rubric.
What we've learned
and share it easily with others.
Couldn't that be multiple then? I mean, multiple languages.
Yeah, but we're not using e.g. pattern languages. Yeah. If you make it plural, then it works. Perfect. Cool.
Writing distill in a wiki reminds me of the time that one of the things I do is go make typo corrections in Wikipedia, and somebody spelled distill with one L or distilling with one L, and I'm like, well, that's wrong. It was about whiskey or something like that. And so I fixed it, and then somebody fixed it back and left me a note. Yo, Pete, over in the UK, we can use one L. So I had never known that before. I know a lot of UKisms, but and it was a really interesting way to learn it too.
Yeah.
So how about keeping track of things like meetings and people and guilds and
So this, I think this rapidly gets into the multi-purpose, not just a wiki, but is it also a dashboard and a databasey kind of thing? And then we have a little bit of a philosophical conversation about what's the difference between a database and a wiki. Like you know, if Airtable is used to keep track of who's where, and we can also do that in a wiki, like where's the boundary? Like which is what is which? So the question you just asked walks us into that territory, which is territory I really like because I'm very interested in the edges between these different tools. You know, the fact that the brain now includes Roam-like backlinks is really interesting, and I have no idea what to make of that yet. And I think that fits our conversation here as well.
yeah. Judy, what do you think about keeping track of things?
I think it's important to do, but I'm not sure I see it in the wiki.
Well, the first easy way is one of the starting points, I think, for this wiki, which is we're going to ask everybody to pick up a template for a personal profile, edit it to be them, to represent them as well as they can, and save it back to the directory with their name on it so that they then become an entity in a directory of who's involved in OGM. And so that's I think the simplest thing.
I'm already working on that with Vincent now.
Yeah, that's kind of a really easy starting point, which turns the wiki functionally into a database of participants.
Yeah, I see the database of participants as a distinct subset of the wiki. I'm not sure that I see the complexity of the working teams and the timing of those events.
Well, that's where the backlinks and everything else really work nicely if we can get those kind of working, because then we can say Pete can put on his profile, oh, and I'm on the OGM Wiki team and on the Massive Wiki team and on the CSC team. I'm just going to call them all teams for a second to avoid our nomenclature. And then each of those winds up linking directly to that or creating that new group if it hasn't been created in the wiki before. And then as other people do the same, it just kind of constitutes itself as we link to the entities we belong to. And then anybody going to the OGM Wiki page in the wiki will then see automatically all the people who just tagged themselves as being on that team, if this works properly that way. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pete.
Yeah. I wanted to do a little show and tell, actually, as we hit this. You may have seen or may not have seen, as I did this, I switched over to Obsidian and loaded our main wiki right now. The main wiki for everybody right now is the Sandbox wiki. It's the main wiki because nobody feels bad editing it, so. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have any true purpose, so it has all purposes, and we feel good about that. I made this profile page for myself, and I kind of purposely made it not quite perfect. So one of the problems with this maybe is that there's this big wall of text here. I copied this wall of text from the OGM forum, so I feel good about what this says, but to go through it, I might break it up into some sections with headings. But anyway, so, here's my name, and I could put a picture here, even in Massive Wiki, and then a little bit about me, and then some contact info. Yes, Jerry.
And like the things that we could layer into profiles are things like superpowers, haves and wants, and praise, gratitude, basically. And the gratitude could be automatically done so that it doesn't look like we're being grateful to ourselves, but there could be a piece of our profile template that just looks up whether we did a gratitude round in Kikolab, like those. And that, I may be elaborating too much, but these are easy things that I see sort of layering into personal profiles, and with a tiny tangent that most people don't understand their own superpowers. So to me, the superpower aspect of this could be a paired exercise or a group exercise or the result of some workshops we do or something like that. So that, you might understand 2 of your superpowers, but it turns out everybody else thinks you have these 4 more. But having that in your profile is really useful. So all of that seems to me to be personal profile fodder.
One of the comments, I'd offer a comment just in terms of the context of what we put there. We switched in some organizations quite a while ago to sort of very short bulleted accomplishment listings. as a way to define outputs that help people see what your work product is in a quick and easy way, because experiences, titles, and various other things don't do that much at all. So
And
that might
the-
be to consider.
That
Say
makes
that
sense.
again, Judy, or the headline of it?
Well,
If it were on my profile page, what would the header be?
maybe it would be meaningful accomplishments or something like that. And
What accomplishments?
meaningful or key or some adjective if you want, or just accomplishments. But it's like, you know, a book, a new organization, whatever it would be. So people have a sense of what your end outputs are.
You might also, where it says I have LinkedIn and Facebook profiles, you might link to those, because
That's true.
one of my goals always when I ask people to create profiles is like, don't duplicate what's already on your LinkedIn page. Let us go to your LinkedIn page and see where you worked and all of that. So making.
I have a funny personal thing. I specifically didn't link these,
Yeah.
even though I did make a link for Twitter, because
Yeah.
these are, I feel, well, they're pretty meaningless to me.
So you could state then, I really don't like my LinkedIn and Facebook profiles, or don't use them very much, or don't rely on them very much, and not link them. But I think for me, the default would be like, for all my resume kind of stuff, go straight over here. Like, do not pass go. I'm not gonna put that here because it'll just make this long.
Yep.
Everybody has their own version of that.
We have our own preferences.
And one of the cool things to observe kind of a wiki profile is that I got to do it the way I wanted to.
Right.
You can sort of
it's
link to
free
more,
form
and then let the more be what each person wants it to do.
Right.
I'm gonna have
So-
to sign off, but thanks everybody.
Oh, that's right, Judy.
The video.
We'll see you,
Take care,
Judy.
Judy.
Take
Thanks.
care.
So another couple show and tell things here. I told Rob, Rob knows Git and knows Markdown, and actually and Obsidian. He's been using them all. So he kind of just needed a couple of like coordination things. What's the link, and what's, which wiki should I edit? So, and then I pointed him to this page, and so then he made his own.
Awesome.
And now this is literally in the wiki. I actually pulled it on the call, on this call. I hadn't seen this, but I said, are there any changes to Sandbox Wiki? And it brought in his change. So he's successfully round tripping, from his computer into the cloud, and then it comes down to my computer. And you'll see he did, he came up with kind of a different, he took mine, he said, okay, I get kind of what Pete's doing, and here's what I want to say. The university is important to me. I'm still on leave from university, so which is why I don't put my university in. This, career is good stuff. I like these. So now I'll go back and I'll probably take some of his ideas and add it to mine. There's another interesting thing that happens with wikis, of course. Bill was inspired to make a page by the rest of us making pages. Probably, maybe, yeah, it's totally empty. So I wonder if I won't move it here. I would go actually over to this is GitHub Desktop. I could go over here and.
Brief question on GitHub Desktop.
Mm-hmm.
As I started using GitHub Desktop, I was realizing that was going to sort of basically fork the whole database to my drive, which I don't necessarily want for everything. I'm perfectly happy co-editing the shared files in the directory that's on GitHub. So do I need to use Desktop, and can I just bypass it and go straight to the repo, to the original?
There's a little bit of I don't know if confusion is the right word, but there's a little bit of ambiguity when you go, hey, I want to do something with this.
I got confused pretty quickly. So I installed the Desktop and I started to connect it to my GitHub account, and then I froze because of this issue.
And Rob didn't freeze, but he went ahead and did stuff, and he did something that he could have made work, but it was a lot more clunky than it needed to be. So, I said, well, actually go back to your thing, delete that directory. And he's like, are you sure? Literally, Pete, I'm deleting the whole, OGM Wiki. I don't know why you're telling me to do that. He didn't say that. He knew what was going on.
He was thinking that, yeah.
I was thinking that, yes, I'm sure. I double checked. I, was watching it very carefully. What, which one you want. And then we had back up and then go forward. and it's like, oh, okay, cool, got it, makes perfect sense.
So did he end up editing the one on his local drive and then syncing,
well,
syncing, or what?
So
maybe the better question is, what do you recommend? Which approach should we take?
Because this is a really useful question, and thanks, Jerry. Let me see if I can quickly.
And Craig and Charles, do you understand the question? Craig is good.
Can I put 2 cents worth in?
Aye.
Please.
I'm familiar with GitHub and not necessarily Obsidian. Historically, I've worked with Visual Studio and SourceTree. It's pretty much all the same. Horribly complex if you're not a developer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that, down the road when this wiki is up and running and is taking form, there are going to be contributors who have absolutely no idea what GitHub does, and forks and pushes and pulls. My God, I've got this hack MD, which is new to me. I've got it open on my other screen and I find it just beautiful. That would seem to be the best option that I've seen so far in this discussion for how we edit pages. That's wonderful. I think anybody can use that.
And we're torn because HackMD has this 2-pane view and I can't think in Markdown. So I can't actually edit I can't write thoughtfully in Markdown, even if I see it next to me and whatever. That sort of breaks me. Also, I think HackMD, we decided doesn't activate links properly. So each of these tools is kind of a trade-off.
Yeah, it doesn't, HackMD, as far as I know, doesn't talk to Git.
But the nice thing about HackMD is that it allows for concurrent editing, which Obsidian does not.
Yes.
So these are all trade-offs, Craig, and we're trying to find our way toward what's the best editor that'll sort of do this. And the benefit of using Markdown is that there's just a ton of editors that love Markdown.
The Nirvana one.
Since I was,
yes.
I just wanted to restate the question just because I was multitasking, and since I was asked, I just wanted, if you want my to respond, then I'd love to hear it again.
Yeah, the question was sort of, are you following the path that Pete and I were on about, and I've now lost that thread. Was it about pulling up profiles and saving them back? The question was, I went ahead and installed GitHub Desktop, and then I suddenly realized that was going to start basically forking the repo to my drive. It was going to create a local copy, which I would then be editing, and then have to remember to sync back to the drive. I would prefer, and I don't know if this helps technically or breaks things, I would prefer just to edit the thing on the GitHub drive directly online, which is feasible because we all have edit access to those drives, but then we get concurrency problems if we're editing the same file, which I think is where this is going. But I'm not sure.
Yes.
Is there a specific question for me, or I mean,
the question for you and the question for you and Craig was, do you understand that issue? Is that problem light up in your head?
Thanks for explaining the issue. Now I understand it. And for me, again, hashtag whatever works. And but I guess one quick idea, which maybe exists as a thing, which is to have, I don't know, somewhere right there or immediately in an obvious place, a kind of moment-to-moment sign up. Like I don't know if that's feasible or tenable, but just to somehow know who's where when. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Anyway, carry on. I'm going to try to upload what I can.
That's actually a really good. So we'll come back to that as in good time. But one of the things that isn't going to be an obvious need, especially with Massive Wiki, is kind of social awareness of who's around to be editing and who's editing where and things like that. You actually want that. You want. I was going to try to figure out how to say this in non-technical terms, but basically, you want social awareness of who's doing what where in the wiki, and you would do that through. Technically, you would do that kind of through chat protocols, or I guess one of those the meeting software that has little people walking around, and then
GatherTown. I was just thinking about that.
GatherTown. You want essentially GatherTown for the wiki, right? You know, or the wikis, right?
It could work in Discord. I think that's also what Discord is used for, right? Just for the voice.
Or
I mean, it could
or
be,
even
doesn't have to.
Or even Mattermost, kind of.
Well, no. Anyway, just to chime in on that point, I think the synchronous voice and or visual or both, not necessarily video, but some visual indicator or at least audio where we can, you know, basically co-working, not conversation, but maybe bits of chit chat just to coordinate.
Yeah. Yes.
There's not so many of us.
Who's,
I think,
you know, who's where and who's doing what. You know, I'm editing my profile page. Jerry is editing, you know, the About This Wiki page.
I think, you know, just again, what I can contribute is the social stuff and the kind of from the edges observation. I think there's not very many of us in number that are, you know, even paying attention or going to be involved immediately. And so that would be feasible as a kind of a protocol. Okay, you just have to go into some space where we can hear each other and or see each other in whatever visual cues in the beginning while we get the other stuff together to kind of, you know, expand it.
A couple things. One, the old school way to do this is basically file locking or record locking so that only one person gets access at a time. That's how it was done yonks ago. B, we're avoiding things like HackMD kind of, which would give us concurrent editing. So this problem would vanish if we were using HackMD instead of Obsidian, except HackMD doesn't do these other kinds of things. So we're like trading off features.
Even if we were using HackMD or maybe collaborative editing is a better way to say that, there's another layer of coordination that would be nice. So one thing to do is get everybody in a Zoom call, but there's a lighter weight version of that, which is everybody's in Discord or GatherTown, and you want you know, a kind of a gradient of synchronicity. And
yeah,
fairness.
but I think we have to really weigh, is it worth running a completely separate tool to do this? And I have to move locations for a second.
Someday it will all be the same tool.
I suggest now it's worth it.
I think I hear you, Charles, and my suggestion would be that it's optional. Like nice, but not necessary, because in a, you know, even in a dozen-page wiki, you can do that completely asynchronously without really understanding what other people are doing what. So it's nice to go, you know, more present than that to GatherTown or Discord or to a Zoom call. Hey Neil, by the way.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. It's Neil in the darkness.
Oh my Neil.
I haven't seen Neil in years.
I'm not sure this counts as seeing him.
I know, I think this is his avatar, which is mysterious.
I think it's his video, it's just frozen.
Anyway, I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to stick on that. It's just my gut is telling me that, but I don't have experience. So
the more you know, the more you can be present with each other, the better you can collaborate on a page. I think that's totally reasonable. But it turns out that you can collaborate perfectly well on pages with very asynchronous communication. So.
Yes, and I have an allergy toward installing a completely new tool like GatherTown in order just to see who's near a document. That's not going to hunt for me, but
just on the ground.
It would hunt for me sometimes. Sometimes it would, and sometimes it totally wouldn't. It's like, yeah, I'm not logging on. I just need to change this page.
Yeah, but my brain is already exploding with the number of tools we're running.
Speaking of which, Craig, if you like HackMD, which is kind of a weird thing I think it's a weird thing to like. It's actually the collaborative editing is really important. We have to figure that out. It may end up being Etherpad though instead of HackMD, and we'll see. You might love Typora. Typora is this beautiful markdown editor. HackMD and Typora are things that edit single pages more than a wiki right now.
Okay.
Can
you put a link to that in the chat?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know what, now that I think about it, I think it's typora.io. I'm just going to guess.
Is there does Git support or provide APIs that you can use to load your stuff in there?
You know, even Obsidian has a Git plugin. The thing that we're going to start off using probably is GitHub Desktop, which is a GUI kind of way to interface with Git.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill and I have the aspiration and the hope and the actual, we think we can make it work, where we can get people to, we think we can help people install GitHub Desktop, and then, you know, click on this, click on that, do this, and get them to run the Git stuff. Okay. So that's our next stop. And I, kind of like you, I wouldn't say that is even that level of handholding is, or tool, that level of tool usage is probably still too advanced for what we really want for OGM Wiki. But you know, it's the next step, and we're continuing to evolve. We'll get there. I wanted to come back to Jerry's question about what is where and where to edit things, because we were looking at profiles, and probably Jerry was thinking, I would love to have a profile on the wiki, and how would I do that? So the way Massive Wiki works, and the way Git works in general, is so Jerry, your question was, I want to actually co-edit on the page with people, which is a good way to do it, and we'll get to co-editing at some point somehow. But the way Git works is more decentralized and more peer-to-peer. So everybody has their own copy of everything. So this shared HTML one is a little bit different because it's the output of this. So I should have made this a different color blue. And actually in one of these drafts, it was a different color blue. But anyway, these other ones, this blue one, this blue one, this blue one, and this blue one are all copies, point in time copies from, you know, one or another places. This is shown with Git, and this is kind of shorthand for GitHub in the middle here as a hub. But Git by itself doesn't actually really care about a hub. The reason we do hubs is for social reasons, not protocol reasons. Git is perfectly happy talking peer-to-peer as well. It's uncommon to see people doing that anymore because it's mind-blowingly cool and powerful. So powerful that it's hard to use. It turns out you need coordination somehow. So the hub is a good coordination point. But anyway, so to answer your question, what you do is you open your Obsidian in the morning and you say, huh, there's a Pete page and a Rob page. There ought to be a Jerry page. Let me go make one. So you can do two things here, actually. You can just start making one, but maybe a good thing to do is, and I can kind of talk about this with the Git plugin. If I just close this thing and then reopen it, and if I had the Git plugin installed in Obsidian, it would say, yo, I see that I'm starting up. I'm going to grab everything that's fresh. So that's not the ideal way to do it. There's actually, what we should do is and I did it to get Rob's thing. What I did is Command U and checking repo status. It's looking for anything new here. And it's going to come back that there's no changes, which is fine. But early in the call, I was actually sitting there. I had this open and I did Command U and it pulled in the Rob page. Wow, that's cool. So that's kind of what you want to do. You want to grab the latest copy. So you want to sync with the cloud, grab the latest copy into your computer, then make a bunch of changes and then push it. You put it back up in the cloud. Yes.
I'm almost clear, but not quite. So in order to create a Jerry Mikulski profile page, do I go to Obsidian and just create a new document there and then make sure I put it in the right folder when I save it? Or do I go to GitHub Desktop, create a new file called Jerry Mikulski, put
You
that
do it
into the
in
repo?
Obsidian.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But and
You
then
can
do I
actually do it either way, but
but do I first need to connect Obsidian to my GitHub desktop now, because my local file is the one that matters more, and I'm going to have to sync it back in order to make the changes happen? Or am I pointing Obsidian straight into GitHub? And am I building a complexity where there isn't one? Because the moment I installed GitHub
no.
desktop, I
This
was like, oh
is
shit, I have a local copy now. I need to remember which one I'm editing.
Obsidian is only ever going to edit local files.
Oh, really?
The
I thought I thought Obsidian would let me edit the file directly on GitHub. No? Oh, never mind that. Okay.
Well, it's a really good question, and it's a really important thing to figure out. So once it clicks for you, you'll help us explain it to other people, because I like, if you just kind of follow, we'll write instructions like, create a file, save, go over to your other thing, click a button. You can just follow the instructions without really understanding what's going on, but knowing a little bit under what's going on under the hood,
for sure,
it's important for a lot of people. So, so there's Obsidian. It can only ever edit local files. You can see my pointer here, right? When I
yes,
yeah. And then you can get it to talk to Git, but what happens when you talk to from Obsidian? What happens when you talk to Obsidian Git is you can tell it to do things like pull and push. It is actually the thing that does the Git connection. The Git connection doesn't actually go through Obsidian at all.
So I'm still confused here. So your diagram here doesn't include GitHub Desktop, and the management of my local copy of the file that's over on the GitHub directory in the cloud. So I'm missing that here. So as far as I can tell here, Obsidian might or might not be creating a local file, which the GitHub plugin for Obsidian then synchronizes to GitHub. But then how does desktop play a role? And why do I need it if that's the case? I'm not understanding where GitHub Desktop fits at all. Because if Obsidian can create a local file and then through the plugin synchronize it to GitHub, why do I need desktop?
So it turns out that through the power and wonder of Bill working on it, if it would take me an extra like a minute or two to do this for real in diagrams.o, but I'm not going to do that right now.
Yep.
Let's draw GitHub Desktop. No, actually, no. I guess we have to draw it here.
It has to be inside the human one space. Yeah.
Yeah. So it turns out that we would draw another thing here. So this is GitHub Desktop. This is your directory of these files.
Yep.
It turns out that the way that Bill thinks this will work, in the main, what happens is GitHub Desktop is used just to create this directory and to connect it with the cloud,
which the Obsidian Git plugin cannot do.
Yes, partly because it's nearly brain dead. It does very little, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The other problem that we've got with Obsidian Git right now is it doesn't do a critical little step as it's doing its syncing. There's one little step that it's missing, and it's going to cause us problems until they fix it.
Crap.
But anyway, you're right. GitHub Desktop can, actually, I said create the directory. That's not the right way to say it. What it does is it connects the directory to Git. And connect is a bad way to say it. What it really does is sets up the linking addresses. So it gets the address, GitHub Desktop gets an address from GitHub, and then it puts it more or less, the address and the address and metadata that Git is going to use to maintain stuff in both places.
I will need to understand this deeper in a future call because I have to bounce at 5 minutes to the hour because I've got to set up for my next call. I kind of get where it's going, but I'm still confused because it looked like you were already using Obsidian to edit files and put them into the directory on GitHub in the cloud. Like
With
that was
Git,
that was working.
With Git, what you do is it's always editing local files. So all the developers in the world, they're editing local files. They don't edit files in the cloud. There's a small exception. Let me draw another box here.
And the plugin that's illustrated here in your drawing is a Git plugin, not a GitHub plugin. So it's basically just implementing Git. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
and it would be perfectly happy talking to GitLab or
any other
Git or whatever.
Host. Okay.
So all of the things that I've been saying are true, except there's going to be another confusing thing, which is yesterday I demonstrated how to go to the GitHub web interface and click the little pencil icon and type something and then click the commit button down below. It's going to look like you're doing that in Git, right? It turns out that you're using the GitHub web interface. So it can be an editor on the repo as well. So there's a way that you can edit on GitHub, but you're actually not editing the GitHub database. You're using yet another client called the GitHub web interface to edit. Actually, it even has, well, it probably actually can peek into the database that's in here, but anyway.
So I will also need to install the Obsidian Git plugin to make this work, as well as
Bill and I are a little bit split on that because there are, if you can use GitHub, so GitHub Desktop, the main use of it is to create this linkage. And then after that, you can just, with some accommodations, you can just use Obsidian and the Git plugin.
And the Git plugin.
So yes.
So Obsidian can't talk directly to GitHub Desktop.
No.
Okay.
And even the Git plugin doesn't talk directly to Git. They both work on this metadata in here.
Okay.
So I said with accommodation though. One of the accommodations is, well, it's actually not that bad. I was going to say what you want to do is use the Obsidian Git plugin, but then you have to. So in this collection of stuff here, there's a loop, a cycle of syncing, and this is another diagram that I've wanted to create. And now, having gone through this discussion a little bit more, I know a little bit better how to create it. There's a let's just do it real quick. No, it's actually going to be, there's different conditionalities here. Add, commit, push.
I'm probably going to have to bounce now because I've just realized I have more prep to do for my next call, which is a podcast recording that I that I realized.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining.
I apologize.
We'll go through this cycle some other time.
This is great. Thank you. And this is all lighting up in my head well. Thanks.
Thanks.
Take care, Jerry. See you soon.
So 6 minutes left, unless y'all want to stay on longer. I've got time, but maybe we should honor the time box.
I was just trying to get into, I mean, it's not urgent, but I thought I could just log in and see something in GitHub, but I don't know where to go or if you need to add me. So whenever it should happen, it doesn't need to be now.
No, now is a good time. Before we do that, and who can go a little bit longer?
A little bit, not much for me.
Okay. Let's come back to the personal profiles, and I'm going to go like too fast for this, but I want to just demo a couple more things. So one of the things to demo is that Bill, through good intention, ended up making a personal page, which is now blank right now, but anyway, but he made it in the wrong place. This is a classic wiki thing. People are creative, and they do things differently than you expected. And sometimes those are creative and inspirational and changes that you want. They're innovations. Sometimes they're mistakes. Sometimes they're innovative mistakes. Sometimes they're mistaken innovations. So with a little bit more work here, or actually Obsidian doesn't look, yeah, actually it will. But I have to do it this way. So I just torqued Bill around. I just moved his page into a directory. So he's going to come back and go, frick, where's my page? And then if I'm smart, I will have messaged him and say, hey, yo, Bill, I put your page in the people directory. I hope that's okay. Go ahead and move it out if you really intended it to be at the top level. So so now to make myself, I'll sync this back up to the cloud, but that's a classic wiki kind of thing to do. It's like, hey, this looks a little bit out of order. It's like picking up trash, or putting stuff in the right place. As you walk around the house, you make the house better, right? Somebody's done something that was either intentional or non-intentional, and you try to make it better, and you sync up with them. Hey, I did this thing, and I hope that was the right thing to do. So so that's one thing I wanted to kind of cover. The wikis are perpetually kind of imperfect, and always you try to move them towards perfection, and you're never successful. But and you try to do that in a social way. The other thing, and let's see if Rob did this. We have already started. I forget who said it, but we were talking about if it would be cool. I think maybe it was Jerry. It would be cool if we did some experiments around how to, how to bump wiki pages into databases and catalysts and stuff like that. We've already started exploring with that, and I'm going to edit Rob's page. He followed a pattern that I had set up. I'll switch this back to display mode. There's metadata in this file that is hidden because Obsidian is metadata aware. And then when I go to edit it, it's fairly easy for a human to ignore it. Kind of, you just ignore everything that's, in these two double dash lines, and you go, okay, well, this has got a special format, and I don't play around with that unless either I know exactly what I'm doing or somebody's watching me. So this is how we see Massive Wiki and OGM Wiki syncing up with Catalyst. Catalyst is not going to be super happy if everybody makes their own little different version of this. My format of a page is much different than Rob's format. But if we all agree to use this machine readable stuff as well, then everything is hunky-dory. So we're thinking that this is a good pattern, that we want to do this kind of dual use thing, a human readable, human maintained kind of thing, and then something that you can actually maintain as a human, but that you have to be a little bit careful with the exact placement of, the colons and the returns and the spaces here and the dashes. This is not super fancy. This is not learning how to program in Java to edit this. it's super easy to kind of just follow the format and you'll do the right thing almost all the time. Actually, let me show you a, it's like, why did he put these double quotes here? These bother me. Oh, darn. I thought I was going to demo something cool. So let me try again to make a mistake. I thought that would be a mistake, but it's not. I broke a rule here. I didn't put 2 spaces in front of this the way I'm supposed to, if I know YAML, or if I'm just trying to follow this by rote, either way. And Obsidian doesn't care what the metadata is because somebody else is going to use it, and it doesn't. But it also parses it, and it goes, you know, I'm not going to completely hide the metadata because I think you broke it. So I can go in and see that I broke it and fix it. And then Obsidian is happy again. It's not going to bother me with it. So so to recap, what I just kind of showed was that we think we can get folks to, and it would be totally optional, but we can say to people, if you want to have, if you want to automatically mirror this listing into Catalyst and other Airtables and God knows where cool places, murmurations, it would be really easy to make this go into murmurations. Just copy and paste this from somebody else's and fill out the details. And if you get an error, ask somebody about it. Ask somebody who knows how the metadata is supposed to work, and they'll help you fix it. So that's where we're going with that. One last thing, here's the directory page. So a top level page in OGM might be people directory. And then unlike a Airtable database, I would have to go in here by hand and realize that Rob O'Keefe ought to exist. Obsidian helps me by looking up, all I had to do was start typing Rob and it found the right one for me. I put my organizations here. I kind of thought a robot might be the thing that looks, and Rob put his on his page. We could have a bot that comes along and takes a page or a line like this, and it could actually look at it and look at the metadata in here, and say, Rob's part of, has got, the robot could see this and then go back over to this page and actually add it. So Wikipedia has bots crawling all over it that do that kind of stuff all the time. Let's make links. Let's look for broken URLs. Let's look for misspellings. And then sometimes they'll fix them automatically. Sometimes they'll add them to a page that says, all the misspelled words that Spellbot found, and somebody can look through those and decide whether or not they want to fix them. So I guess I wasn't thinking of that for OGM Wiki right away, but we could do it as long as it's not confusing to people. Charles, I think there was a thing that we were going to talk about before. I wanted to dive back into profiles real quick.
No, that's all good. And it relates certainly to what Vincent dove into for 30 minutes or so the other day on Kikolab but yeah, I was just
you were talking about GitHub. That's what it was.
Yeah, just to get logged in, plugged in, and added and whatnot.
You can actually look at the wiki already, the markdown for it at least.
I also, just FYI, I did install GitHub Desktop, and I'm logged in, so that's where I am at this point.
Hello, Eric. Thank you for finding me. And I apologize for missing our meeting.
That's fine.
Folks, this is Eric. We were going to do the co-coaching meeting at 9, and I'm tardy. Charles, maybe we'll catch up later on GitHub.
Yeah, it's really not pressing. So it's thanks for all that you're doing, and hey, Eric, and yeah, no worries at all.
Are you finished on this one? Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually recording too. Let me stop the recording. Craig, Charles, thanks. Neil, if you're there, thank you.
Well,
we'll see you around.
yeah.